Welcome to Brew Cheese, where we brew up the finest of cheese. If you're new to our channel, we normally brew up commander decks on a $25 budget, but this year, I'm taking part in the EDH subreddit's Secret Santa gift exchange, where we build each other decks with a $25 minimum budget. With that in mind, I set a $35 budget for today's deck, which features Yennett, Cryptic Sovereign. She's 2 and white, blue, black for a 3/5 Sphinx with flying, vigilance, and menace. Whenever she attacks, we reveal the top card of our deck, and if it's an odd casting cost, we get to cast that spell for free. Yennett is a massive value engine, having built-in card draw and a cost cheating effect, paired with 2 evasive abilities and a high toughness combined with vigilance. Not only that, but she also allows us to ignore normal timing restrictions on cards that she casts off the top of our library, meaning that we could play a creature, an enchantment, an artifact, or a sorcery right then and there at the beginning of combat. Unlike our normal approach, we're building this deck rather straightforward and playing to Yennett's strengths. So what strategy are we employing? We're playing all the big mana spells with odd CMCs that Esper can provide on a budget. We're aiming for maximum value with one-sided board wipes and plenty of effects to take our opponent's best stuff, and going with the theme of the event, including a few gifts along the way. Although we do include some tools to be able to select the card that we flip over with Yennett, there may be opportunities where we are blindly revealing what is on top. In those situations, having our mana rocks have odd CMCs lets us place something should we reveal them, and that can take the sting out of not flipping over something juicy like a 7 or 9 CMC spell. Azorius, Dimir, and Orzhov Cluestones are 3 mana artifacts that tap for their guild's colors, and for 2 of that guild's mana, they can tap and sack to draw us a card. Unlike most commander decks, we normally don't want to draw cards, because that just strands high CMC spells in our hand instead of in our library where we want them. However, the ability to draw should we need to makes these inclusions well worth it. Similarly, we're also running Azorius, Dimir, and Orzhov lockets. They're more or less identical to the Cluestones, except for any combination of 4 of that guild's mana, they'll sacrifice and give us 2 cards. Commander Sphere costs 3 for an artifact that taps for any of our deck's colors, and can also be sacrificed in a pinch to draw us a card. With our extended budget, we get to include Sol Ring in this deck. You all know what it is. It's a 1-mana artifact, and it taps for 2. We're also getting to play with Gilded Lotus. It's a 5-mana artifact, and it taps for 3 mana of any one color. Darksteel Ingot is also 3 mana for an artifact, and it taps for any color mana and is indestructible. Seer's Lantern costs 3, and it either taps for 1 colorless, or we can pay 2 into it and tap it to scry 1. Scry effects are some of the most reliable ways we have of making sure that the card we rip off the top with Yennett is something nice and not just another land. We're playing the poor man's version of Sensei's Divining Top with Soothsaying. It itself is a little pricey, but it shines so well in Yennett that I can't imagine the deck without it. It's a 1 blue enchantment that lets us pay X to look at and reorder the top X cards of our library, or we can pay 5 to shuffle it. When reordering cards with Soothsaying, it's important that we stagger a card we want to cheat out with a card that we want to draw next. Prognostic Sphinx is 2 blue and 3 for a 3/5 Sphinx with flying. We can discard a card to give it hexproof until end of turn and tap it, helping to avoid spot removal. And most importantly, whenever we attack with it, we scry 3. When we attack with this and Yennett, we can choose to let the scry happen before Yennett's trigger, letting us dig fairly deep before flipping over the top card. Crystal Ball is a 3-mana artifact, and we can pay 1 and tap it to scry 2. Brainstorm is 1 blue for an instant, and it lets us draw 3 cards and then put any 2 cards from our hand back on top. This is a great tool for getting something out of our hand and back on top of our deck so that we can cheat it into play when we attack that turn. Dream Cache is a blue and 2 for a sorcery. and it provides a similar effect to Brainstorm. We draw 3 cards and put 2 cards from our hand on either the top or the bottom of the deck. Telling Time is a blue and 1 for an instant. We look at the top 3 cards of our library and put 1 into our hand, 1 on top, and then 1 on bottom. Penance is a white and 2 for an enchantment, and we can put a card from our hand on top of our library to prevent the next instance of damage from a black or red source of our choice. We don't really care too much about the damage prevention effect, although it's pretty nice. It's just the ability to put a card out of our hand on top of our library that's the real winner here. Future Sight is 3 blue and 2 for an enchantment. We play with the top card of our library revealed, and we can play that card. Although this does give your opponent information on what is at stake when you attack with Yennett, it lets us do things like play lands or cast small CMC things to get them out of the way before we attack. Sigiled Starfish is a blue and 1 for a 0/3 Starfish, and we can tap it to scry 1. Now that we've set the stage, let's meet the players. Yennett wants to cheat out big mana spells, and that category kicks off with Artisan of Kozilek, a 9 generic 10/9 Eldrazi with Annihilator 2. Whenever we cast the Artisan, we get a free reanimation for a creature in our graveyard. Bane of Balaged is 7 generic for a 7/5 Eldrazi, and it has a pseudo version of Annihilator, having the defending player exile rather than sacrifice 2 permanents when the Bane attacks. Pathraiser of Ulamog is 11 generic for a 9/9 Eldrazi with Annihilator 3. It has a super menace effect where it can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. Blazing Archon is 3 white and 6 for a 5/6 Archon with flying, and it says that creatures can't attack you, period. Butcher of Malakir is 2 black and 5 for a 5/4 Vampire Warrior with flying. Whenever it or another of our creatures bites the dust, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Angel of Despair is double white, double black, and 3 for a 5/5 Flying Angel. When it enters the battlefield, we destroy target permanent. Rhea Dawnbringer is triple white and 6 for a 4/6 Legendary Angel with flying. At the beginning of our upkeep, we return a creature from our graveyard straight to the battlefield. Emiria's Shepherd is 2 white and 5 for a 4/4 Angel with flying. When a land enters our battlefield, we return a non-land permanent to our hand or to the battlefield if that land was a plains. Teysa, Envoy of Ghosts, is a black, white, and 5 for a 4/4 Legendary Human Advisor with vigilance and protection from creatures. This is an especially potent combination because it means that we can swing freely with Teysa as she's effectively unblockable, but because she has vigilance, she's not only open to block afterward, but can block without dying. On top of that, whenever a creature damages us in combat, we destroy that creature and make a 1/1 flying spirit. Serra Avatar is 3 white and 4 for an avatar, whose power and toughness are equal to our life total. Even if we've taken a beating, throwing out something as big as a 20/20 will certainly give people pause. If it ever goes to the graveyard, we shuffle it back into our library. This effect does have the side benefit of giving us some padding against the occasional mill deck, unless they're packing instant speed graveyard wiping effects that can exile the avatar while its trigger is on the stack. Enigma Sphinx is 4 and 1 of each of the Esper colors for a 5/4 Flying Sphinx artifact creature. If it dies, it goes back into our library third from the top, meaning we know the position of one of our big creatures when we're swinging with Yennett. It also has Cascade, meaning that when we cast it, we get to start flipping cards off the top of our library until we find a card that costs less and we cast that for free. Master of Predicaments is 2 blue and 3 for a 4/4 Flying Sphinx. Whenever it hits a player, we hold up a card in our hand and an opponent guesses greater or less than 4. And if that card's CMC does not fall into the group they picked, we cast it for free. Knowing our deck, opponents may be likely to pick greater than 4, which can be a great opportunity for us to cast something like a mana rock for free and conserve the rest of our mana to cast a big spell that is stranded in our hand. Silent Blade Oni is a 6/5 demon ninja with ninjutsu for 4, a blue, and a black. We can cast it for that ninjutsu cost if it's in our hand, but not with Yennett's ability. Whenever it hits a player, we get to cast a spell out of that player's hand without paying for it. Archfiend of Depravity is 2 black and 3 for a 5/4 flying demon, and at the end of each opponent's turn, they pick their favorite 2 creatures and sacrifice the rest. The Archfiend is a great utility for making sure as many of our creatures make it through as possible by making sure there's as few blockers as possible. Consuming Aberration is 3 blue-black for a horror, whose power and toughness are equal to the total number of cards in all of our opponent's graveyards. Every time we cast a spell, our opponents mill cards until they hit a land. It's worth mentioning that Yennett's ability does cast the spell, so we get additional triggers off of this. Diluvian Primordial is 2 blue and 5 for a 5/5 flying avatar. When it hits the field, we get to cast an instant or sorcery out of each of our opponent's graveyards without paying for those spells. Luminate Primordial is 2 white and 5 for a 4/7 avatar with Vigilance. When it enters, we Swords to Plowshares a creature that each opponent controls. Rounding out the Primordial collection in our deck is Sepulchral Primordial, 2 black and 5 for a 5/4 avatar with Intimidate. When it enters, we reanimate a creature out of each of our opponent's graveyards. Divinity of Pride is 5 of any combination of white or black for a 4/4 flying lifelink spirit avatar. On top of that, it gets +4/+4 if we have 25 or more life. Blatant Thievery is 3 blue and 4 for a sorcery, but again, that doesn't matter very much when it comes to Yennett's ability. For each opponent, we permanently steal one of their permanents. Grab planeswalkers, commanders, potential blockers, whatever strikes your fancy. Corrupted Conscience is 2 blue and 3 for a creature enchantment, and we can steal the enchanted creature and it gains infect. We can use this to steal something good or throw it on one of our own creatures to make it extra threatening. In Garruk's Wake is 2 black and 7 for a sorcery, and it destroys all creatures and planeswalkers that we don't control. Plague Wind is very similar, also costing 2 black and 7 and also for a sorcery, except it only destroys opponents' creatures, but it does prevent them from being regenerated. Both of these are amazing cards to flip with Yennett because it definitely means no blockers. Mass Calcify continues our mostly one-sided board wipe train. It's 2 white and 5 for a sorcery, and it destroys all non-white creatures. This won't affect Yennett or a large number of creatures in our deck, leaving us mostly unscathed. Urza's Ruinous Blast is a white and 4 for a legendary sorcery, meaning we have to have a legendary creature or planeswalker out to cast it. It destroys all non-land permanents that are not legendary. With this, we save Yennett and a few of our creatures that we're running, so it's not so hard to rebuild. Do keep in mind if we flip over a card with Yennett's ability, like one of these board wipes, even if it's odd, we don't have to cast it if it's not the right time. We can instead opt to put it into our hand. Time Wipe is a blue, double white, and 2 for a sorcery. We return a creature we control to our hand and then destroy everything else. Of course, Yennett is obviously the linchpin of our deck, and removing her solves an awful lot of our opponent's headaches. That's why we're running cards like Spectral Ward, 2 white and 3 for a creature aura, and it grants the creature protection from all colors and gives it a +2/+2 power toughness bump. Having protection from all colors makes it mostly unblockable, except by colorless creatures, and also shields it from spot removal and damage-based board wipes. Shielded by Faith is 2 white and 1 for a creature aura, and it gives the creature indestructible. We can also choose to move Shield of Faith to any creature that just entered. Whisper Silk Cloak is 3 generic for an artifact equipment, and it equips for 2. It gives its wearer unblockable and Shroud. Nurok Stealth Suit is 2 generic for an artifact equipment, and it equips for just 1. It also grants Shroud, and we can equip it at instant speed for 2 blue, letting us effectively use it as a reusable counter against spot removal. Since this is a gift deck, I couldn't pass up the opportunity to play to that theme, and so we're running Gift of Immortality. It's a white and 2 for a creature aura. When the enchanted creature dies, we return it to play, and then at the end step, if that creature stuck around, Gift of Immortality returns to enchant it again. Gift of Doom is a black and 4 for a creature aura, and it gives the creature death touch and indestructible. It does have the option to play it as a morph and flip it by sacrificing a creature if we feel the need to be mysterious, or maybe just to get it into play cheaper. Continuing our gift theme, Generous Gift kicks off our spot removal. It destroys any permanent at all and gives its controller a 3/3 green elephant in exchange. I have to say it's a major flavor fail for this card to not give a white elephant. The rest of our spot removal continues with Aethersworn Adjudicator, a blue and 4 Vidalcan Knight artifact creature. It's a 4/4 with flying, and it offers us the ability to pay 1 white black and tap to destroy a creature or enchantment, or to untap it for a blue and 2, letting us both use it and attack, or to destroy 2 things. Mortify is a black, white, and 1 for an instant, and it destroys a creature or enchantment. Despark is a black and white, also for an instant, and it exiles any permanent with CMC 4 or greater. Oftentimes, these are the permanents that are going to cause us the most problems. Ruinous Path is 2 black and 1 for a sorcery, and it destroys a creature or planeswalker. It has an alternative mode where we can cast it instead for 7 and turn one of our lands into a 4/4 creature. Most of the time we're not going to choose that mode unless we're desperate. Curse of the Swine is a fantastic mass removal piece. It's 2 blue and X for a sorcery, and it exiles X creatures and leaves a 2/2 boar in its place. Oblivion Ring is a white and 2 for an enchantment, and it exiles a non-land permanent until it leaves the battlefield. There are some tricks you can pull off with its wording to make it a permanent exile, but in this deck, it's just a versatile removal piece. Banishing Light is more or less identical to Oblivion Ring, minus the tricky wording. Profane Procession is a black, white, and 1 for a legendary enchantment. We can pay 3 white and a black to exile a creature, and then if we've exiled 3 or more creatures, it transforms into Tomb of the Dusk Rose, a legendary land that taps for a mana of any color, or lets us pay 2, a white and a black, to put out any of those exiled creatures onto our battlefield. Our mana base starts with Command Tower, which enters untapped and produces any color in our identity. Dromar's Cavern enters untapped, but requires us to bounce one of our lands, but does not require that that land be untapped, allowing us to keep our tempo going on that turn by tapping the land for mana first before we play Dromar's Cavern and bounce it. This does put us a turn behind on land drops in exchange for the versatility of all 3 of our mana on a land that enters untapped. Arcane Sanctum enters tapped and taps for any of our 3 colors. Spire of Industry taps for colorless, or we can pay 1 life and tap it for any color mana so long as we have an artifact. There are a significant number of those in the deck, meaning that we can enable this easily. Isolated Watchtower taps for colorless, or we can pay 2 and tap it to scry 1, letting our lands pitch in to make sure that Yennett grabs something spicy. If that card is a land, we get to play it for free, but we have the catch that this entire ability can only be activated if an opponent has at least 2 or more lands than we do. With the prevalence of land fetches in Commander, that happens fairly often for us. Zalfiran Void scries for 1 when it enters and taps for colorless. Temple of Silence is unfortunately the only temple our budget allows for this deck. It taps for white or black and scries for 1 when it enters, and it enters tapped. We're also running all 3 of our guild gates, Azorius, Dimir, and Orzhov. They enter tapped and tap for either mana of their guild's colors. Castle Vantress enters tapped unless we control an island, and it taps for blue. We can also pay 2 blue and 2 to tap it and scry 2. Halamar Depths enters tapped and taps for blue, and when it enters, we look at the top 3 cards of our library and reorder them. New Benalia enters tapped, taps for white, and scries for 1 when it enters. We're also running Dismal Backwater, Scoured Barrens, and Tranquil Cove. All 3 give us a life when they enter tapped, and then tap for 2 possible colors each. Rogue's Passage, it taps for colorless, or we can pay 4 and tap it to make a creature unblockable this turn. This is very handy for getting Yennett through untouched so that she can live again to attack another day. Caves of Koilos taps for a colorless, or we can tap it for a white or black, but it deals 1 damage to us if we do. The rest of our mana base wraps up with 8 plains, 6 islands, and 6 swamps. The total cost for this deck came up to $30.96. These prices are using TCG player prices, not a sponsor, and exclude shipping, but do include cards in any condition. Thank you for watching, and if you like what we're doing here, subscribe or share this video with a friend, or leave a comment telling us what we missed or what you'd like to see in the future. See you again next video.